This point, unfortunately, Megha Vishwanath could not make it. Her flight got cancelled. She's the author of Unseen, the untold story of Dipinder Goyal and the making of Zomato. She's a former journalist and current vice president at Zomato, bringing a rare insider's perspective to India's startup ecosystem. She's also my former colleague, so I'm very glad to have her here on the panel, and I'm extremely elated to moderate her today. Let's get this conversation started, shall we? All right, as I said, India's startup story, one of the most fascinating, ladies and gentlemen, and also, you know, story that is bold, many a times questionable, ambitious. It's also something that's constantly evolving, has been evolving over many, many years now. But let's also admit, it's complex, it's hard to define. There's no single definition of it. And the lessons that we learn along the journey will help build India in the long run. Now, to start off with India's growth and India's startup growth particularly, we've moved forward beyond a point where there was a time, Arjun, we were talking about explosive growth. We were talking about painful corrections in the market. But from the vantage point of entrepreneurship, storytelling, there's an evolution. Would you agree? And that evolution has only come about in the last 10 years.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's always exciting to be this part of the country during this time. And with this kind of an audience, it's always a pleasure. So thank you for that. To answer this question on startups. So before we came in here, I was just talking to some of the students and asking them, what are you looking at getting out of the discussions here? So they were telling me that there's so much of things which are changing around us. Right? So how do we make ourselves more prepared for the new world? That seems to be a running question in everyone's mind. And I think from that, your question is very relevant. Right? I think, and as a person who have been around since the beginning of the startup journey in India, which is 2011-12, on how it really exponentially went up, I do agree that it is evolving. More, I think it's maturing. Right? Early days, it was more like entrepreneurs fueled by a lot of venture capitalists, where the only objective was market share and growth at any cost. Those narratives have slowly changed because finally the entrepreneurs who started these startups itself are 10 years wiser. So they do understand that building sustainable businesses is just not this. And it is also about keeping a view on your P&L. It is also about ensuring that your employees and customers are happy, sustained and continuing with you and things like that. So I can see a very positive trend coming in these new generation companies where the objective which is being chased is slowly changing and becoming quite similar to what the veterans we spoke in the morning, the Tata veterans or the PNG veterans will say, which is about building sustainable long-term businesses.
That's right. And you know, as previous authors also mentioned, they were also startups once upon a time, perhaps chasing different goals than what we are at the moment. Megha, lovely to meet you and lovely to see you. It's been a very long time. Megha has since very long, and Megha has taken up multiple roles since then. She's also a mother now and juggling between book signing and book writing and motherhood. Thank you for taking time out. Thank you for being here. It's such a pleasure to see you once again. You've had a front row seat in India's startup story, and I've seen you doing that firsthand, so I can vouch for what a hard work you've put in last so many years that you've tracked India's startup story. Now, if I were to ask you to sum up those last 10 years and tell me where India's startup story currently stands, what point? Is it a point of reflection? Is it a point of reinvention? Or is it a phase of growth? How would you define it?
Well, firstly, Shweta, thank you so much for having me and such kind words. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, my flight got cancelled. I was really hoping to do this in person, but the Delhi weather got in the way. Now, to your question, in terms of, yes, the startup ecosystem in India has been evolving, and this is something that, you know, we've seen over the past couple of years, especially the exponential growth that it's had. You know, the topic on this panel also speaks about whether it's a mixed bag. Yes, of course it is. It is a mixed bag of success and stress. At the same time, we've seen companies scale faster than ever before. Of late, we're also seeing companies create real-time impact, which was not the case perhaps a few years ago. We've also seen how fragile some of these businesses are. You know, I remember there was a time, say 10 years back, that, you know, capital arrived early, expectations rose quickly. In some cases, growth really ran ahead of fundamentals. And those weren't signs of failure, at least from my perspective. It was a sign of a very young ecosystem that was still learning. You know, India wasn't just about producing outcomes, it was also building a muscle memory when it comes to entrepreneurship and building it the right way. Of course, the process itself was naturally uneven, but I feel like we're coming off of age. There are many serial entrepreneurs that now we are seeing evolve, and as is like the ecosystem in the West, people are making mistakes, but they're learning from it as well. So I would just look at this as a learning curve, and I think we have great companies coming up ahead with us and great founders that are building real companies with real impact and solving problems that truly matter.
All right, lovely for putting that in perspective. Coming to you, Aditya, you're somebody who's mentored founders. You've been a founder yourself. You've been an entrepreneur. What, according to you, is that recurring blind spot that you see in India's, you know, growing list of founders? We're talking about I think we'll talk about the pros. We'll talk first about the cons and the blind spots and where India's entrepreneurs can do better. In your assessment, having mentored many of them, having been a founder yourself, where are the blind spots?
Yep, I think that's a very relevant question, and again, thank you so much, of course, for having me here as well. Always a pleasure to be in this part of the city. Usually when I come, we have an office down here, so usually I visit my office, but today I think is one of the days where I'll not visit my office and just have a conversation with all of you. So blind spot, I think in an entrepreneur journey, I would not say when they're starting up, there's a blind spot. I think the entire first 3 years is full of blindness, right? There's not a spot, but it's a whole
phase.
journey. Yeah, it's a blind space entirely for the first 3 years. So how we kind of define it is when companies are primarily starting up. I mostly see founders raising and chasing after capital these days a lot, right? Having been an investor, I don't mind, right? Because they're coming, of course, to me and they're making money for me. But as an outsider, as an advisor, I would not tell them to raise capital if they're not ready about it. And how we call it in a startup journey is a value of death, right? There comes two value of deaths in a startup journey. The first one is when you're not ready to raise capital and then you spend enormous amounts of time just in the market out there to chase and attract the right sort of investors. And then when your traction is not able to justify the capital that you're raising, you end up burning through all the midnight oil, and then you end up going into a valley of death where your idea is not working, customers are not coming. And I think that's the first blind spot that comes into any journey. The second blind spot that I'm seeing these days is there's too much competition and consolidation that's happening in every space. You look at pharma, you would be able to name 10 startups. You look at skincare, for example, right? In Kolkata itself, you would be able to name 10 startups, right? Dot and Key has come from here, right? So there are so many companies inside every spaces now that founders, when they are starting up their journey, the first blind spot is how to acquire my customers. Whether to actually just go ahead and spend mindless amounts of money on performance marketing, or whether should I actually go ahead and look for more sort of organic sort of channels. And when they are not able to...
Is copycat, you know, entrepreneurship also a problem where you see a lot of founders coming up with similar sort of projects, as you pointed out, where maybe there are too many players in pharma and too many players in edtech, and they're all copying each other's models, so therefore that is also a blind spot on what is your differentiator? Where do you stand out and how do you stand out?
No, absolutely. I think how we define it in startup parlance is a playbook, right? So if an entrepreneur, let's say in skincare, has developed a playbook which is mostly for, let's say, elder women and elder men, that cannot be replicated to somebody who's building it for Gen Zs. Same product, same composition, same everything, right? Same usage. But then the playbook gets very, very different.
So most of the times, what I was saying, Shweta, is that the blind spot is that who's your actual customer, right? Because if you'll take skincare for me in my example, that's a problem for every set of audience that is out there. So I think that is the major blind spot that comes in. And third is about retaining the customer, right? That's another blind spot. You sell the product once to the customer, but then if the customer is able to buy your product over and over again, that is true entrepreneurship. But if you're not able to champion the right cause of buying that customer over and over again, you would not be able to build a scalable business out of it. You would be able to do 10 crores, 12 crores, or heck 100 crores in a year, but what after that? The entrepreneurship does not stop at becoming a 100 CR company. I think it starts from there, right? So I think, yeah, you have to win that customer over and over.
Retaining that growth momentum, and this is, Arjun Mohan, EdTech is an industry that you've worked in very, very closely, which has seen a boom, and then it has seen a massive backlash. How do you believe, the sector got to a place where it has at this point, and, what did it do so wrong? Coming especially from Baiju's example, and you've written about it, what do you think it did so wrong so as to get the kind of backlash that it did?
So this is a controversial question, but that's okay. So I don't think EdTech and education as a sector has gone anywhere to a wrong place. It has always been a very large sector, and it will continue to be. What has happened is that some of the companies who tried scaling in it may not have done it the right way. And hence, the most fundamental point of taking care of your customers comes in the way of scaling. As someone who has seen it all, what I can say is that all these companies started off with the right intent, building the right products, and because the right products and the understanding of the consumer problems were very, very clear, it got the traction. It went very well. But after a point, there is that exact vantage point where you need to decide that I have won the first round. Now it is about doing so much more for the new set of customers who will also become profitable to me over a period of time. I think that point, most of these companies forgot their customers and their focus points became something else. And once you forget your...
growing too fast, too quickly?
Not keeping
customer at the center of
absolutely right.
Business?
Absolutely right. Too fast, too quickly, and all these businesses takes time. So after a point, you need to be very clear that this is a new customer getting into. I need to ensure that this customer is successful. Maybe in short term, I will not make money on them, but I will eventually make money. So I think that's where these companies lost their way. As a result of which, after a few years, the same customer they were viewing went away from them. But this is a cycle, believe me. I mean, like one...
Just to make it a more controversial question, is that the mindset of Baiju Ravindran? Is that what you're telling us? The man who flew too close to the sun and burnt himself in the process.
Yeah, so I don't want to make any controversial statement, but finally an enterprise...
I need to get some news from you.
Finally, an enterprise, especially a startup, is nothing but an embodiment of the founder. So if the founder... Because the startup really did quite well in the beginning, because the founder had very clear intent on how to go about things. Over a period of time, the founder gets influenced by a lot of things, as a result of which the idea and direction can change, which also results in how the enterprise also changes its path. So I will only say so much.
Okay, fair enough. I think we'll take that. Megha, you've recently...
Just to chime in on this, we were discussing the blind spots from like an external perspective, but since we're talking about startups and entrepreneurs, I also feel like a lot of the founders discover these blind spots only in hindsight. While, we discussed some of these external blind spots, it's also important to address the internal blind spots. I feel like sometimes early optimism, marks some structural weakness that does not get identified. So for instance, overestimating demand or underinvesting in culture, assuming capital will always be available. I think these are also blind spots that I feel like a founder along the way perhaps just misses to see. They maybe underestimate how quickly a complexity can grow and how much leadership can change once you hit scale. Since we're talking about edtech sectors, these are sectors that grew so quickly that perhaps leadership in that sense did not change as quickly as it was required. Sometimes I would say that these blind spots aren't about just incompetence, they're also about building something new where there isn't a set benchmark from the past, right? So it's just about recognizing them, correcting course along the way, and doing that before they harden into habits. I feel like since you spoke about blind spots, there is stuff externally, but there is so much internally course correction that one can do. And I think that's where the overall maturity of the ecosystem is supposed to happen.
Is that something, Megha, you learnt more when you were researching for Unseen? And tell us, you know, apart from the blind spots, what were your key takeaways since you've gone behind, you know, and given us a never seen before story of Dipinder Goyal and making of Zomato. Tell us, what were your biggest takeaways when you were researching and writing about this unicorn?
I think some of the takeaways were, of course, very specific to the Zomato and the eternal ecosystem, and very, very specific to who Dipinder is as an entrepreneur. But I felt that, you know, the idea was to go beyond the milestones, beyond the numbers. And there is a human side to entrepreneurship that sometimes we as journalists or as reporters, you know, we look at an external picture, or as analysts, we look at an external picture, but there is a human side to this. I think, speaking specifically of Unseen and the Zomato story, I realized it wasn't just about success or failure, it was largely about survival. And what fascinated me the most was that how often the company was close to that breaking point, how often they kind of were so close to that line that should not be crossed, and how much of an evolution was shaped by uncertainty, missteps, sheer human complexity. The emotional complexity of entrepreneurship, I think, needs to be spoken about a little more, so that more founders feel seen and understand that you can course correct. And also, I feel like a lot of the startup narratives focus on outcomes. I think we need to change that narrative and change that dialogue about the process, you know, the doubts, the trade-offs, the decisions that founders make. That's what gets rarely spoken about. And I think that was something that came out most in my research, which is what made me take a really human angle to starting up and trying to put that in this book.
Wonderful, because you go beyond headlines, you go beyond the final output, you go beyond retention, the numbers, the billion-dollar companies, the zillion-dollar companies. We talk about value, we talk about process, and we talk about changes that some of these startups have been able to make. And we also know, for that matter, Aditya, that they're growing at a very fast scale. You work closely with the government, you work with Niti Aayog. So I have to ask you, are government policies keeping pace with the growth of startup community?
Yeah, I think it's kind of deja vu, because I was answering the same question yesterday at almost the same time in a panel in Gurgaon in Delhi, where the question we were discussing mostly around the CGT SME scheme, which is the loan that is being given by the government. And we were talking about that our startup policy is enough to capture the entrepreneurship, true entrepreneurship in this country. I definitely have an optimistic view. I would not say I'm a true advent of Bharat is something that I've written in my book also. I think, yes, there are a lot of schemes that have come up, right, specifically for different sets of women, men entrepreneurs, different sectors also. And geography-wise also, if you go to Startup India website, you can see different geography-wise concentrated schemes also that are there, right? And a lot of grants, a lot of subsidies that are given. Now, in fact, most of the schemes that you're seeing in the government that is coming up, the interest is being offset with the subsidies that's been given to them. So, for example, there's a PMEGRA scheme, which is the Employment Generation Scheme, where 15 to 25% subsidy is being given on the loans that you are taking, and the interest that you're paying on that loan is being offset by the subsidy, right? So, a lot of new schemes are coming up, but see, entrepreneurship is too large in this country. You see, we have about 1.8 lakh registered startups with the DPIIT of India. And these are the registered startups. If you count the unregistered startups, there are too many. To have one scheme covered for all, or to have multiple schemes which can cover everyone in a short span of time, that's impossible. But yes, government is definitely sitting up on the table, right? And this is not just, in fact, Shweta, just for the entrepreneurs. For investors, the reason we did not invest a lot in startups during 2015 to 18, which was a vantage point, specifically for seed early stage investors, was because of this angel tax that was brought out, right? And now the government also did away with the angel tax, which is a huge transformation scheme for the investors also. So I think a lot needs to be done. The government is definitely hearing. And this is something that I can tell you from policy matters, that yes, we work day in and night to kind of lobby with the government and have more schemes coming through. But definitely, I think to the extent India is increasing, entrepreneurship is increasing in this country, it's extremely hard to bring in a lot of schemes.
To keep up.
Yeah.
And government is coming up with as many policies, regulations as it can with each passing day, trying to match up with the zest with which startup ecosystem is growing. Arjun, if you could redesign one part of India's startup story, its ecosystem, be it talent, funding, regulation, culture, what would it be in your assessment of having worked in startup ecosystem, having worked in edtech, which has been very controversial in the last 10 years or so? What would you change? What would you make better?
So I will, if there is one thing, then I will look at the way they are looking at their business, in the sense, I won't ask them to continue being a revenue-focused company. I would want them to all look at how these companies are going to sustainably grow and be profitable, and most importantly, make their customer happy. So, in my view, any organization...
So people and culture?
I mean,
which is what veterans talked about as well, early in
Yeah.
the day-to-day.
See, finally there is, I mean, we all say this, right? You tell me what are you measuring me against, and I'll tell you how well you're doing. It's as simple as that, right? So I think any organization for that matter, what is your definition of success? Which I think is the biggest problem with the startups today. If you are going to define your success as the amount of capital you are going to raise, then that is a problem in my view. I think Aditya put it the right way, right? I can see, because I'm now in consulting for the startup, I can see a large group of entrepreneurs or startup owners, founders, more interested in spending their time raising capital and getting that fancy value for their company, rather than really being bothered about their customers and building a sustainable business. I think that metric of measurement needs to change. So, I mean, you look at any newspaper which is into economics today or business today, you will see a news on how a company which raised 300 million at a 1 billion valuation, or 20 million at 200 million, it's always a news. How many news items do you see where you say that this company has managed to create a profitable business and grown its customers by so much?
Yeah, but I can assure you that conversation has also changed. In the last year or so, we have woken up to a lot of unicorns failing their customers, including the one that you've worked in. At the same time, some unicorns successfully becoming profitable, as in one Megha works in, and they are showing the path to how startups should behave and should work. And I think the conversation about path to profitability has also increasingly come in focus. So as far as journalists are concerned, I think we are also changing conversations. We're also learning from what's happening around us. Megha, so coming back to you at this point.
I was just trying to tell you that I'm not trying to critique the press here.
You must. You must.
But the idea is that finally, what is the metric an organization measures itself? I think that's the most important thing. If I am bothered about my customers and saying that I'll build the best education product in the country, which will help 80% of students be excited in the classroom rather than be the 10% today, then I think we are making a change truly. Rather than saying that, okay, I want to raise money at $1 billion. And I just gave the example of press, because finally press is a reflection of what the university, what the society runs behind, right? That's the only reason I took it.
Reflection of the society, 100%. Thank you for justifying me there. But Megha, coming to you, you worked in a company that is hugely successful, has seen its own ups and downs, but at the same time is one of the most profitable unicorns in this country, and has shown the path, as I mentioned earlier, to a lot of startups which follow herewith. In your assessment, what were those key moments when you track the journey of Zomato or Eternal? What were those key moments that were pivotal in defining its success?
I think strangely, I guess it was the missteps that taught the founder and the company way more than the successes. It's just that how quickly are you able to pull the plug on a mistake, and that's the sunk cost fallacy that you're able to get yourself out of. I do feel, in terms of, I don't want to get into like, okay, this was one milestone and this was one milestone and here's where they were successful. I would say that, I think sometimes in entrepreneurship or in the head of an entrepreneur, probably clarity is mistaken as certainty. I guess like in when you're starting up or when you're hitting some success metrics, you should know that it's not about knowing the outcome, it's about knowing what matters more. In Zomato's case, one would have thought perhaps that the IPO was the ultimate win. But when I was researching and I actually spoke to the folks who made the IPO happen just a year before, that was probably the worst time to even go down that path. But they kind of went ahead, made some of those decisions. Luck also played a part in making some of those milestones successful. But it's just about knowing what is right in terms of the priority despite the uncertainty. What matters right now and acting in alignment with that. Is it, there's always conversation about growth versus sustainability. There's conversation about speed versus quality, ambition versus responsibility. These are always like bucketed in an or sort of situation. So I think particularly in Zomato's case and in this story, the amount of learning that happened every time there was like a near-death situation, but how quickly they were able to just cut costs and bring themselves back. I think that's what made this story different, and that's what helped them survive despite all the missteps that were made along the way.
Absolutely. So Aditya, basically how quickly you rebound and bounce back from every time you hit a low, how much you keep people at the core and the center of your business, and how, profoundly do you stick to the culture that you have built? What is it that you want to do for the people? What is it that you want to achieve in the long run, as opposed to some short-lived goals? I believe that is what makes a startup successful and the other one fail. Would that be the differentiator?
I think you hit the nail on the head, right? People are one of the most important factors, right, to run a startup. And I'll tell you like a very practical one-liner explanation for it. Imagine a big company, right, which is almost, let's say, 1,000 crore plus in valuation, right? Although valuation is not the yardstick, right, to measure the company, but yeah, in our scenario for startups, let's take valuation as the yardstick. Now, in that 1,000 crore company, you would not see the founder every day running behind employees and doing the work done. Or you would not see the founder cold calling every customer out there every day, right? The founder is probably out there in San Francisco, right, doing investor meetings, while his team is in Bangalore doing the hard cold calls of the customer. The founder is definitely driving the news or the headline, since of course it's TV9, so you can say that it's driving the news in the headline. But the employees are actually driving the revenue and the valuation, right? So essentially, people are one of the most important factors, I think, the hires that you do in any particular startup. And this is not just true for a 1,000 crore company, even for, I would say, a 40, 50 crore, 20 crore company, the hires that you do are extremely important. And over the course of the last 10 years, where I've been actively investing, what I've seen is the companies that have given the best sort of returns for me, right, are the ones who have invested a lot in two things. One is promoting junior talent to becoming senior talent and making them wealthy through MSOPs and ESOPs, or building that middle management, the VPs, the SVPs, the AVPs, and promoting them so much and giving them so much independence that they eventually become a co-founder later on, right? So that is the kind of thing that I envision that people building is important. But at the same time, founders always come and ask me, Aditya, how do I build the culture, right? How do I build something that my people celebrate every day. And it's very hard. In fact, I asked the same question to Sanjeev Bikhchandani sir of InfoEdge, and he said, Aditya, culture ऐसे एक दिन में build नहीं होता है, right? Culture is definitely over charisma, but culture, the true culture sets when your employees get salaries on time, when your employees kind of feel happy that their company is truly valuing them, when your employees don't fret or don't get scared before taking a leave in the company, before applying for the leave. That is the true culture in the company. And I think this culture builds over time. This is not an overnight phenomena. But yeah, invest in the right people and they'll definitely, the human capital, what we talk about, although I'm from the venture capital industry, right? If you add an AD in front of it, we call it adventure capital. So the true adventure capital is capitalists invest in founders, and then those founders invest in the right sort of people.
Absolutely. So invest in human capital. Keep human capital at the core of your business. I think I've come to the last leg of this conversation, so I want to come back to you, Arjun. What advice in your assessment would you give to the next generation of founders who want to build something which is truly transformative? What is that one lesson that you have learned yourself working with the edtech industry, with the way it has grown exponentially and the challenges that it's facing at the moment? That one takeaway that you would give to a potential person. There's a huge crowd of young people here who perhaps want to be, might just as well ask them, how many of you want to be a startup? How many of you want to build your own startup? Be founders of your startup? Show of hands? Show of hands? I'm too old, but anybody out there? Okay, I can see a couple of hands. All right, so there you have it. They are your, they are the people you're answering at the moment. Young people who want to be, the biggies of tomorrow, have a startup dream. What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, so the advice, so I don't want to call it as an advice. All I would say is entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. It requires you to have extreme perseverance, and I would advise you to only get into it if you are extremely passionate about the idea. There will be days, months, years where you will be so down because of the failure that you will question everything you stood for. You need that passion, the true passion to go on. So hence, if you are planning to be an entrepreneur, ensure that you really have the passion for that idea. Otherwise, take a job. There are so many entrepreneurs who are looking for employees.
You know, I tell the same,
I'll add something to it.
Okay.
Of course, since I was, not long ago, I was on the other side as well. I'll just say one thing to what Arjun said, I think timeless advice. Nothing is, even Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Everything takes time, right? When I started building my venture capital firm in college, I think it's taken me almost 1/3 of my life, right? And before turning 30, if you're spending 1/3 of your life in something, that means that you have to be really passionate about it. But with passion comes patience, and you have to be extremely patient about it. Just continue to work hard, do the boring stuff every day, and I think the results would matter on its own.
You know, Megha, I tell the same thing to my journalism students every time. I tell them, just have passion. Money will follow eventually. I think money follows more quickly when you're starting up as opposed to when you're in the business of journalism. But please, I want to know from you, you know, what's one thing, since you've covered startup all of your life and now you've written extensively about one startup that you're working with, what's that one advice that you would give to young entrepreneurs?
I think beyond what Arjun and Aditya have already said, I guess one of those underrated skills in most founders is sheer emotional regulation and making decisions you can't fully explain at the time. But if I were to sum up based on my observation, what I've seen is that, you know, entrepreneurship is not a straight line, but neither is life. But the sooner you understand that, it's extremely grounding. And you know, I focus on building, of course, as these they've pointed out, that something that you're passionate about. Focus on survival, optimize later. That will come. This is a long game, and that's where you should focus on.
All right, focus on survival, and growth, optimization will follow. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you, the three of you, for taking time out, and Megha, to you especially, joining us from Delhi at this point. It was lovely speaking to you. Let me now, I think I'm going to call Sudha to kindly felicitate the two gentlemen here on stage, and I'm going to personally felicitate Megha when I go back to Delhi. Thank you, Megha.
Thank you, Shweta. And while that's happening, I would want to acknowledge the moderator. Perhaps you have no idea you're in the company of someone who's so fierce, and how wonderful Shweta is. We were both rookie producers in a newsroom, each other's shoulders at the end of very long, hard days. But it is no surprise where Shweta is today, and I can just see.
I have bribed Megha.
Right here.
I'm giving her my December salary, and that's the reason why she's saying what she's saying. But very kind, Megha. Thank you so much. See you very soon. I hope to see you soon. Thank you, Arjun. Thank you, Aditya, as well as Sudha Sadanand. Moving on to our next session, which is the author session 6, A Career with Impact and Purpose. Professor Debashish Chatterjee and Kaushik Mitra in conversation with Sudha Sadanand. Now, in a world that is obsessed with speed and success, careers anchored in meaning and purpose stand out. And they do so rightfully. Professor Debashish Chatterjee is the author of 1 Minute Wisdom. I believe Kaushik is here? Yes. Kaushik is here, and Kaushik Mitra is an author of The Career Edge, The Unwritten Rules of Success, and a VP and CFO at PepsiCo India, joining our very own Sudha Sadanand on the stage. Take it away, man.
Could you please take this? Hello, hello. Are you all right, Bruce? I wonder this is all right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, particularly the young ones right at the back. A round of applause for them. I think you've been here right from the morning, and thank you very much. You make this session even more riveting. Thank you so much. All right, so we have two gurus here. One is the quintessential guru who's taught many people, and and the other is a corporate guru, Kaushik, if I may call you that. And let's start with the topic, with this, the career with impact and purpose. Now, when you talk about these two words, Professor Chatterjee and Kaushik, certain professions dovetail very easily into it. Let's say if you are a research scholar, or if you are somebody, a special educator. But when you talk about a career with impact and purpose, do you think that they still hold, a lot of truth and relevance if you talk about a corporate career? That's how people understand careers to be. I mean, if you're a singer, you were asked at one time, that's all right, but what do you do for a living? So, Professor Chatterjee, you first, and then Kaushik, you next.
Well, I'm not very sure if corporates spend enough time trying to distinguish between impact and purpose. I'll give you a simple example. I'm asking you to simulate your heartbeat by just, pumping. This fist looks like the heart. So if I ask you to pump 72 times a minute, which is the average rate of beating of the heart, and I'll tell you $100 for doing this for 10 minutes, and then I'll motivate you, and I'll say, let's give you $1,000 for doing it for half an hour. And you'll still do it, you'll be stretched beyond. But then, if I ask you to do it for 1 hour, you will tire and you will stop doing it. The heart is doing this for 2.4 billion times in a lifetime of 65 years. Because the heart has a purpose, the fist has only a goal. A purpose is integration of goals. The heart has to integrate with the goals of the rest of the body. The heart has to slow down when you're meditating. It has to. So pacing up and down, connecting with larger goal systems is what purpose is. If you have no purpose, you will be goal sick and you will fall apart. There is no corporate, there is no individual, there is no leader, there is no manager that can start without a purpose. You may or may not have any specific goal right now, but without that purpose you can't even live, because you are part of an ecosystem which has created you. You have to fulfill many goals, just as just as you're growing up, evolving as a person, as a professional. Over to you.
That is an amazing way to, the heart. So let me actually start with the heart. At work, and I've been at it for, almost 40 years, and I've been with PepsiCo for 24 years. And this journey is not about the head and the hand. The head and the hand you will have to bring to your job, otherwise you will not survive. You won't be a successful professional. But it's the heart which really takes you the long distance. And I remember when I joined PepsiCo, it was a company where the culture is a little bit like a Fizo culture. You fit in or you shape out. You love it or you hate it. There's no place in the middle. So, and love comes from the heart. So I think Devashi hit the nail on the head. Purpose is about heart. Now our ex-CEO, all of you have heard of her, Indra Nooyi, somebody who we are very, very proud of, an iconic leader heading an iconic American company. She coined this phrase, performance with purpose. Okay, and that is at the heart of what this topic is all about. So, if you look at companies today, and more so, we are focusing on things which are purpose-driven. And value creation earlier, and I'm a CFO, so I can tell you value creation, shareholder value creation used to be historically top line and bottom line. But now it is top line, bottom line, and lifeline. And lifeline is about making the planet a better place. And it is connecting with the heart, it is connecting with purpose. And those companies and those brands who are able to do that will be able to not only survive, but command a premium, have a competitive edge. So purpose is taking a center stage in corporate boardrooms, and it's part of the future agenda.
All right.
And I feel very, very good that we are focusing on that.
All right. Now we'll focus, gentlemen, on the books that you've written and try to dovetail into the concept today. A Career with Impact and Purpose, Professor Chatterjee's 1 Minute Wisdom, and Kaushik Mitra's, The Career Edge. Lovely books, both of them. Very anecdotal, very personalized, and that's the success of any book that I feel I can also walk with you, hold your hand as an author and walk. Professor Chatterjee, I started your book and found very riveting that you start with the concept of Satchidananda, which is Sat is the truth or reality, and Chit is consciousness, and Ananda is eternal bliss. And let me quote one line from you. You say that it's as relevant as it is today, as it was in ancient times, that wisdom. How relevant is that to a career where we all want to kind of, achieve goals which are already prescribed for us, sir?
Satchidananda is not just a concept. It has a perennial relevance across timelines and space lines. Sat means, in empirical terms, it means real impact. Chit means knowledge that takes you towards that impact. And Ananda means fulfillment that comes as a result of the impact. Now, if you look at the empirical level, this is true. If you look at the transcendental level, this is where the rishis were looking at the word Satchidananda. They said Sat is existence, Chit is awareness, and Ananda is bliss that comes from fulfillment. Look at the entire continuum, and you will see this is the map of the human condition, which is holographic. So human being is not just an isolated entity sitting here. You see, I have a rheumatism because of the cycle of the moon. So I know there is a connection between me and my larger, including corporate environment. But the fact of the matter is, if I ignore, what is a hologram? It's like a cauliflower. You take out one part of the cauliflower, the structure will be the same as the rest of the cauliflower. So the human being represents essentially, existentially, three very important elements. I want reality. If somebody is wearing fake hair or fake flowers, immediately I there's some reaction in me. Because I am reality, and I don't want to see the reality being somebody's telling me untruth. Immediately I will shirk. That simply means that existentially I am committed to my existential reality, which is Sat. Chit is eternal curiosity. It's only the human species that is curious.
Right.
And finally, Ananda is bliss that comes from fulfillment of what you intended to achieve in life. If you can ignore these three, if you can run a corporation without these three, I'll be very happy. But I don't think no corporation exists without human beings, and no human being exists without these three elements. Right. So if they are not perennial, I don't know what is.
Okay. Kaushik, one chapter in your book where in 2015 you went as CFO to Vietnam, and like all of us, great flair for writing considering we've all studied, British English. But you wrote mails and it never got through to your associates and to your partners. I mean, somehow you felt that either they don't like you or you're not being able to be accepted. And you say that as we go up the ladder, we often become anchored in our own opinions. We are, to keep growing, we must shed that weight. Embracing the humility to learn. Would you like to talk about that? And also how true that is in today's, to have a career which is both impactful and purposeful, as it were.
Yeah, I think, when we started learning, the world was, changing, but not changing, and I'm talking 35 years, 40 years back, right? And the world was changing, and the biggest thing that happened was computers, right? Dot prompt, and, that's the big thing. But today, if I look at, the world is changing at a much, much faster pace. And therefore, what is important is, the other change is, that at that point in time, knowledge was scarce. And today, there's an abundance of knowledge. These are two big changes in terms of the learning atmosphere of our times and now. And therefore, if I look at the first one, as we become, senior and senior, we tend to accumulate baggage. I'll tell you a story. I mean, I've gone from Delhi to Chennai, Chennai to Dubai, Dubai to Hong Kong to Ho Chi Minh City, and some other places, and we keep carrying the same furniture. I've been married for 30 years, and my wife is attached to some furniture. Knowledge is a little bit like that baggage that we are keeping on carrying to every place, and suddenly we realize in Hong Kong we don't have space for the furniture. The apartment in Hong Kong, the space is a very, very expensive apartment. So knowledge has to be also treated like baggage which you need to shed at times. So it's a process of learn, unlearn, and relearn. And unless you do that, you won't be relevant with the world that is changing so rapidly.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. And quickly, in a world which is changing so rapidly, how does one do that? I mean, you have to keep unlearning, learning, tutoring yourself every day, as it were.
Look, I mean, and this is for the folks who are getting into there, and the students here who are getting into early career, or people earlier in their career. My advice is, when you're starting off, focus on the learning. Do not focus on fancy designations, and do not focus on, the cushy, air-conditioned office jobs. If you're getting into a company which is brand innovation, makes it deliver, go work in the factory. Go work in the sales office. Because you can't build a long-term career. It's like constructing a multi-storied building without a strong foundation. And then the other thing is, don't get fixated with you. The Vietnam story is very, very interesting. I always loved words, but I got stuck with the career juggling numbers. Now I don't tell that to my HR folks. But when I went to Vietnam, I used to write these designer emails, and my team was all Vietnamese and Japanese, and they were completely demotivated. They didn't know what the hell was going on, till one day my boss came and rapped me on the knuckles and said, "What are you doing? It's not about you." And then I realized that I need to slow down, because the Vietnamese folks were translating my English into Vietnamese, getting the answer back into Vietnamese, and then getting it back to me. So what I thought I was doing very well, and my strength, was a completely demotivator for the team. And therefore, that realization changed everything. And after that, I slowed down, I spoke slowly, I reinforced what people understood. And that has happened to me many times in life, in different places. So this thing about, we know it, and this is how things work. It's the other thing, when you go outside, I realize there is also a cultural pride.
Right.
And as soon as you come and say, okay, this is what I used to do in India, people are put off.
Yeah.
It's a proud country.
Right.
Don't tell me what you used to do in India.
Yeah,
Understand my context first.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
how do you include people? And it's back to that connect of the heart. The brain and the hand is listening to you, but the heart is not connecting, because, there is a big gap.
Just a minute. Can you hear that sound, Rakesh? I think that's blissful. See? Satchidananda. Professor Chatterjee, in your book, you talk about fear, and I don't think there is anybody who's devoid of fear. I mean, I'm not. I'm scared, feared. I mean, I fear most of the times. In a career, doesn't this emotion play a very important role, not a negative, as it perhaps propels people like me to stay on course? But you know what you say in your book, and this is very, very interesting indeed. Fear sharpens focus and builds walls of protection. It is necessary, yet incomplete. So, what does fear do, Professor Chatterjee, to someone pursuing a career seriously? I'm adding that bit seriously because again, esoteric careers are seen to be non-serious, which Kaushik and I were speaking at the breakfast table, but that of which later. Yeah.
So there is a thin line between carefulness and fearfulness. Sometimes we misconstrue fear as something that gives you license and liberty to do anything you want. I was in Calcutta. I took a taxi from the airport to Joka, and this guy is breaking all signals, signs, and he's just breakneck speed. He's moving towards the destination, flouting signals. Oh. So I said, "Sir, what is that you're doing?" He says, "Sir, I'm a racist." "You are a racist?" "Yeah, I like racing cars." I said, "All right." So he looks at me and then he says, "How about you?" I said, "I'm a fascist because I drive faculty and stuff." So his face little, he doesn't understand what I'm trying to say. And he says, "What about the person sitting next to you?" I said, "He is my faculty, he gives marks and remarks, so he is a Marxist." So does that solve your problem? Now, fear is an essential commodity if you have to create order. The Upanishads talk about Mahat Bhayam. Mahat Bhayam means the grand fear in which planets stick to their orbits and in which everything moves in absolute synchronicity. Now, if you take away that fear, you take away the order along with the fear. There was a time when Singaporeans used to come to Calcutta to figure out how beautifully organized this city is all about. Singapore is run by Lee Kuan Yew, and I have had several conversations with him as to how order and fear often get confused. Now, who wants to compare Singapore and Calcutta today? See where we have gone. Right. So you take away that component called carefulness, which is misconstrued as fear. A little bit, the other side of the fear is that it cripples creativity.
Yes.
So if you do not know where to stop, the foundation of fear has to end with the borderline of be careful. If you cross this line, there is a consequence. If you have no consequence, you have the kind of democracy that you see everywhere in the city.
Right.
Is this a city we dreamt of? I don't know. I leave that question to you rather than answer it.
Yes, okay, sir. Kaushik, about career edge.
Just say something on the fear topic that he's talking about. I mean, in an organizational context, I mean, this, the earlier regime of my way or the highway, and let's say getting things done through some kind of negative stimuli, right? If you don't do it, this is the consequence, right?
Yes.
That, and with the newer generations of folks who are getting into the workforce today, and it's a multi-generation. We had a nice dinner discussion on the different Zens. I'm not going to go there, but nobody cares about don't tell me what the negative consequences are. People are looking for add value to me and motivate me. Give me oxygen, don't give me carbon dioxide.
Right.
And I think that's the difference between knowledge, which was in rarity and paucity, and therefore we were looking up for knowledge today. Now today, everybody, every conversation with my son is a reverse mentoring process. So what do I have to add value to him? What is my value add, right? So leadership today has a very, very different paradigm. The command control, fear will not work.
Right, Kaushik, I want to ask you about the career edge. You say that curiosity is very, very important in a career. Now we're talking about impactful and career with a purpose. Let me quote you. You say a curious mindset leads to deeper understanding, creative problem solving, and continuous self-improvement. But you know what the flip side is? Often seniors and bosses, if you ask questions, it's perceived as ignorance or insolence. I mean, a lot of people that I spoke to that you don't even know this. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. What is the significance of being curious with an impact in a career?
Look, I think curiosity is a brilliant thing. And I'll give you a story again, a personal example. When we moved to Vietnam, our son had to move away from the Indian system to the IB system. And unfortunately, our education system is a little bit of a cram and vomit system, right? You do a lot of mugging and then you go and give an exam, right? So the question is, are you really creating curiosity? Are you? And then when we went to Vietnam, the IB system is very, very different. I mean, now, of course, we have it in India. And he was struggling. I mean, he was, the grades were not great. And as Indian parents, typically, we were saying, what happened to your grades? I mean, and he was basically, relax, take it easy, it's a very different system. But I love the way they are teaching. I love the way the courses are constructed. I love the work on finding out things myself. So that is curiosity, right? So the question to ask ourselves is, so curiosity is supremely important. Now back to your question of in an organization. I honestly believe, and it depends on the culture of the company.
Right.
Right? And it's not the same. And in the company that I've worked for 24 years, there we always look at people who have a point of view and who are curious to know how things are happening. So if you're in a meeting and you have a question, you have to ask that question. If you're in a meeting, doesn't matter. And the other thing is also a little bit like when I work with the Japanese and I work with the Americans, I can tell you it's very, very different in terms of how the process happens in a boardroom. And but let's focus on the Western world right now. There is no, the senior most person is the one who is always right. And you have to always defer to what he or she is saying. And therefore, if I have a good idea or I have a question, I have to voice my opinion fearlessly. Voicing opinions fearlessly is a very, very important thing. It helps you clarify your doubt. It helps you also give the signal to everybody out there that you are present, you are mindful, and you have a point of view. So again, my advice to folks is, and India is changing, and the corporate world is also changing. I think if you have an opinion, if you have there is no dumb question. Honestly, you know what happens? I have had several times when I was starting off, I was holding back a question, somebody else asked it. Oh God, I had that question, I should have asked it myself, right? So, express yourself.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, don't do classroom participation. I've also seen that. Which is people just ask questions for the sake of asking questions.
Heck of it, yes.
It needs to be relevant and it needs to be authentic and genuine.
Right.
Because authenticity and genuineness is something which is very, very important. So, how you ask, when you ask, that is also important. Sometimes people are a little abrasive, right? So that's not good, right? So you got to doing it the right way, asking the right way.
Method to the madness.
But curiosity is great. Please foster curiosity. Back to that continuous learning thing I talked about.
Professor Debashish Chatterjee, the next question is to you, and it's considered very, very important in today's context, which is about, about going up the corporate ladder. And you say it's a chapter on desire, and you say while negotiating a promotion, this is for young people to say, do not hesitate on what you desire. Instead, focus on how you can increase your deserving quotient, whether you deserve it or not. But Professor, don't you think that that would be taken as sliding back from one's intended purpose? Why don't you elaborate on desire, which can lead to a positive impact in a purposeful career, sir?
First and foremost, again, the distinction between deserving and desiring is not necessarily of semantics. You have to see that, and I'll just give you an example. I see this, I'm in this Khandani sushi restaurant in Japan, it's called Sushi 10, and they serve only 10 people, and it's been around for 75 years. So I desire to have the best of Japanese food, but when I look at the menu card, the price is so prohibitive that I feel like getting out of the restaurant. But since I have an Indian flag on my jacket...
Could you hold it closer, Professor?
Yeah, since I have an Indian flag on my jacket, I thought, why insult my country? So I stay put. And the first thing I get on my plate is seaweeds. Then I get sushis in the form of octopus. This is an octopus laden, and I can't eat half of that. So when the bill comes, I enjoyed roughly half of it, not the rest of it. So when the bill comes, the lady watching me says, sir, here is your bill. And I'm surprised that the bill is only 1/8 of the menu price. So I ask her, there must be a calculation mistake. You've charged me much less. She says, no, I was observing you and I billed you for what you enjoyed, not what you ordered. And so you can see this struck me, that does this restaurant deserve to be a branded restaurant? You were not listening to me when I was finishing the story.
Okay.
So the point is that are you going to brand this institution, this restaurant, this institution called Sushi 10, based on how you mitigated desire or what you deserve? A customer deserves to get the best food for his palate for the price he paid. Now, if I now bring this to larger corporations and the education system, if you only met what the student is looking for, you can charge a fee. Otherwise, you can't charge a fee.
All right.
Imagine if this could be the criteria, then what kind of institutions would we have?
Wonderful. Yes.
So that's a connection, that's a link between the two.
All right. Also, now, MD and CEO Barun Das, I think, wants to ask a question. Go ahead, sir.
Devashish, Kaushik, I want to learn something that you said, which I find there's a bit of a gap in my understanding, so I just want to get it clarified. And the purpose is to learn from you. Devashish, you talked about the order and fear.
Yeah.
So, but what I practice, what I feel, and that's what I want to ask you, that I think there are two levers which can work, not only fear. So I say either bhai or bhakti. Either of these two work. You gave me an example. I still don't know whether there is an SOP or a standard process to know where bhai would work, or internal motivation, if I may call it, and where fear would work. So that's a question for you. And Kaushik, the question again, some of my colleagues present here would have loved you, because you said that you need to ask questions. But in my opinion, asking an irrelevant question and keeping quiet, I would always encourage someone to do the latter, not the first one. So I think while being vocal is important, but being relevant and being on the context is also important, isn't it?
Well, shall I take the first? The thing is, I go back to Lee Kuan Yew because this example I gave you from Singapore. Now, I have had several conversations with him. My first conversation was when a British journalist was interviewing him for what he did in Singapore. He was asked this question that you made so many election promises, but you did not keep many of them. And she had a record, dossier of promises he did not keep. He said, you are a student of politics. You must know that in politics there's a distinction between rhetoric and reality. You win an election with rhetoric, but you have to address reality. So what you call bhai and bhakti, essentially I would use the word love instead of bhakti. I say, let's say fear and love.
Self-respect.
Yeah, so fear and love would be like in-breath and out-breath of an organization.
And if I may say, that I feel that I would try the bhakti path first. If it doesn't work, fear is the second lever that I'll apply.
Well, it's not an either or, but I think there's a slight, it's not an either or thing. Fear is not what you cause. Fear is what is inherent in human nature. When we were mammalians, we had to have fear to protect ourselves, right? But that protective instinct, if it grows inward and become internalized as fear, then you lose your humanness, your creativity. But if it is not present externally, that's why you have cops everywhere. Not because, see, just to finish this example from Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore. So in the middle of the night, I'm crossing a road in Orchard Road, and this is an American friend of mine who stops me on my tracks. He said, look, the signal is red. I said, there's nobody on the street, not a single vehicle. What if I just cross over? It's commonsensical. He says, no, you'll be fine. I said, who will report this? He said, I have to report this. I said, you have to report this? So policing has been internalized. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that even Lee Kuan Yew learned at his later age. Singapore was built with a lot of austerity, and during their annual day, students were bursting crackers, and they had spent about a few $1 million on bursting crackers. So Lee Kuan Yew was asked this question, why did you not stop them? They're wasting their money. He said, I also believe they're wasting their money, but we have to remain relevant for the new generation. So you have to understand that this is a dichotomy that you have to deal with. Without fear, you cannot have an organization. Barun, whatever you may say.
Thank you. No, I am agreeing to you. All I'm saying that's my second option.
Appreciate your question, though. Yeah, go ahead.
I started by saying, don't do classroom participation. Now, I'll give you cultural examples. I worked in Asia Pac. If you go to a meeting in Asia Pac, right, people don't talk, and people don't ask questions. I had and I'll give you another example of team dynamics. I had a team which was somebody from Colombia, somebody from Guatemala, somebody from Venezuela, somebody from China, somebody from the UK. The Chinese person never spoke. He had all the right questions and maybe the right ideas and the right comments. And I had to say, literally, I had to tell the Colombian guy, please, thank you very much, we heard you, right? He was a garrulous fellow, kept talking. And I had to ask, Andrew, why don't you come up? And then he came with a brilliant idea. It's also cultural. Now, Indians, we all know argumentative Indians. You put 10 Indians in one room, and I can tell you about, because I've worked elsewhere, right? They will have 10 different points of view, and everybody is very passionate about their point of view, right? Everybody has two points to offer for sure. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about genuine, authentic curiosity. I'm talking about voicing your opinion fearlessly. Voicing your opinion fearlessly is going to be a very, very important part of an organization's culture. And sorry, but beg to differ from both of you on this concept of fear. Okay, fear is like carbon dioxide, does not build culture, does not, does not deliver results in the sustained long run. Plus, we are all a function of our generation. Do unto others have done unto you. That leadership style is not going to work with the younger folks. And let's ask the folks at the back of the room, are they going to be inspired by motivation, inspiration, guidance, coaching, mentorship, hand-holding, or my way or the highway, being told what to do? The bosses who have got the best out of me have been people who have empowered me, have been people who have trusted me, have been people who have allowed me to fail. There is this big concept now. If I contextualize fear and performance, right? If we don't create a culture which has a safety net, we will never allow people to fail. And if people don't fail, you don't learn.
Barun, sorry.
Barun is there.
No, Barun, sorry, not Barun, sorry. Kaushik. Fear of not living my full potential is the only reason why people do extraordinary things. I had a little note from Sunil Gavaskar, who was supposed to write an endorsement for my book, Invincible Arjun. He said, I'm going to write an endorsement from Australia. I'm doing a commentary. He did not. So after 3 months, I said, sir, your thing hasn't come. I'm in West Indies. I will send it to you once I'm in America. I said, sir, the publishers are saying this is the timeline. So he said, I'm sorry, Debashish, I already wrote you an endorsement, but I was scared to send it to you until I perfected it. The scare was that how can Sunil Gavaskar send a substandard endorsement to an IM director? That is Sunil Gavaskar's fear.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think
Kaushik, you misunderstood me completely.
Debashish, you should go back to your discussions. Sudhaji, please take it up. Accepting that, Kaushik, I'll take it up offline with you, that you have respect for law or fear for law. We'll take it up from there.
Thank you, Varun. Professor, I'll come back to you. It's very important for all the young people and of course everybody who's sitting right at the back. This is about mindfulness, okay? Now, what happens is that we all get stuck in some organizations with labels. Oh, he always comes late, he's very lazy, he's a slacker, he's giving excuses. All this happens. Now, we do get labeled, we may not hear of it, but we come to know about it. Now we get mired in this and we are unable to break the shackles in a career like that. What do we do? Because anything I do, he's going to call me that only because I did this 10 years ago. The thing is, how does one navigate around it, Professor? Because we just, even if I change my job, they will say, oh, the lazy one has come back, So what does one do?
See, the labels are not going to stick if what you might call a crisis of perception. So the issue of perception is that a spider is crawling on your back and you know it's a spider. You're not going to Google and find out whether this is an Amazonian spider or an African spider. You're simply going to jump off your chair and move it. So there's something called a crisis of perception. You can call it Kalidas syndrome. And I'll give you the example of another guy. He was mentioning Swami Chinmayananda. He was traveling with his father's asthi kalas, father's dead body ashes. And he looked at this bowl and he said, my father was walking around and has become condensed to a bowl now. Is that going to be the end of my life? So if somebody is called a duffer, somebody is called a Kalidas who's chopping his own tree, there must be a time when this fellow faces what you might describe as crisis of perception in terms of what you call crystallization of discontent. My discontent has reached a point where I cannot but just turn around. Until that point comes, labels stick to you. And then you want to get out of... I've seen so many people among my students who were late starters. You know, they were not doing too well in the first 5 years. So I would tell them, don't come for the 10th students' reunion. Come only for the 15th. By which time you will have run you're a lambi race ka ghora, you will have run your race. Then you will know what Amish Tripathi was a case in point. I taught him in IIM Calcutta. And you will see that, you know, his career would map. He was not considered a very exciting banker, but when it came to writing, he really broke the new ground.
I've had the privilege of editing him, and yes.
I taught him a business ethics course. Yeah. He bunked half the course. That's probably he became a writer, but that's another story.
Right. Okay, Kaushik, let's turn to you. This is, ladies and gentlemen, what a fascinating title. When I read this, I actually kind of went back and read it again. This is about adaptability. This is about, like, if I'm transferred from Kolkata to Chennai, usually, you know, those young people out there, unless I'm transferred to Singapore or Hong Kong, I'll say, Chennai jete hobe ar ki korbo, like we say in Bengali. But this is a story about adaptability. You know, one of the keys of having a satisfying career. Talk about it, Kaushik, how you had a problem when you had to go from Gurgaon to Chennai, and you changed it completely into an opportunity, and the title of the book, title of the chapter, as it were. Please.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I think adaptability is not only something which drives success in the professional world, but I think it is also a life skill. And in this particular, I've had many stories like that, but we went from Gurgaon to Chennai, and in the same company, and the culture was so different. I'm not going to get into the details, but basically, you know, I almost thought at one point in time that I'm completely an outsider, although I'm in the same organization. And at one point in time, I was saying, okay, maybe I should quit. And I then realized that the problem was not with my environment. The problem was in my own head. I was expecting everybody around me to change. And this is something in life that we will get situations, and you know, you can't choose your boss, you cannot choose your team, you cannot choose your situation. Business is doing well, business is not doing well. When you get into the role, you cannot choose that. Right. Therefore, the battle is in your mind. And the question is, what difference does the difference make? Right. And the question is, and the answer is, you need to adapt to your situation. You need to change yourself rather than expecting the situation and others to change for you. Right. And that insight in Chennai has helped me everywhere, because everywhere I went, it was 3 or 4 degrees of change, right? And the battle is in your own mind. And you know, that was a big unlock for career success. For everybody starting off, I would say focus on adaptability.
And the chapter title?
Yeah?
The chapter title, From the Balcony to the Dancing
The Balcony to the Dance Floor, yeah. I mean, correct. I mean, all our lives, I mean, think of professional life as the action is happening on the dance floor. What I call the dance floor, which is, you know, where the gravity is and what keeps us down. We are busy. We are always busy.
Right.
Who cares if you're busy or not? Nobody cares whether you're busy, right? People want you to be available. Okay, I'm a CFO, I can tell you, we don't produce, we don't sell. So what on earth am I doing as a function? And I keep reminding, the finance function that it's our job to create shareholder value, right? And therefore, we can't be busy. You know, the finance function is turning on the lights and turning off the lights at the end of the day. I've seen that everywhere. And we feel great about it. We are working hard. Who cares you're working hard?
Right.
So how do you move from being busy to being available is another mantra if we can really master that. And honestly, I believe artificial intelligence can help us do that.
Right.
Can really help us do that.
Yeah, the buzzer's gone, so I think I'll just take, I think I perhaps have 1 minute, Shweta, do I? Or we are done? 1 minute? Yeah, concluding remarks, Professor Chatterjee. One difference that you find, I mean, I do not demarcate people by Gen Z and Gen whatever, but I'm asking you, you've seen a batch of students over decades. Do you see that one difference that demarcates students who've come to you in the last 5 years as against those who've come to you 10 years ago?
Well, my average age is 23 because that's the time kind of students I meet all the time. The thing is that there is an audacity in their orientation to life which we lacked in our previous generations. There is a sense that time is short, life is contingent, and you must make an impact as quickly as possible. And so I think that is extraordinary, except that it has to be tempered, I think, with a little bit of wisdom, which is what this 1 minute wisdom is all about. Right? Thank you for asking that question.
Give it up for, ladies and gentlemen, for Professor Chatterjee and for Kaushik Mitra. What a riveting session. I think you young guys can be louder, no? Yes. Yeah, let's hear it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's hear it from the young people at the back.
Yes, thank you very much, both. I think it was very interesting. Hope you enjoyed it. I wanted to ask you about Kurkure, Kaushik Mitra, but then I didn't have the right time. But any time for Kurkure, this is the man. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good thing we didn't have time.
Ananda, Professor Chatterjee and Kaushik Mitra for taking time out for joining us here on the show. Please stay on the stage. May I please invite Anirban Chaudhary, Consulting Editor, TV9 Network and TV9 Bangla to kindly join us and felicitate our guests today. All right, we are going to begin. Sorry about that. We are going to begin our next session now, which is Author Session 7, and that is Lessons in Corporate Transformation. I beg your pardon. Lessons in Corporate Transformation. Transactions come easy to me when it comes to corporate. But joining us for this conversation would be Parthasarthi Bhattacharya. He is the former chairman and managing director of Coal India Limited and the author of When Coal Turned Gold. And joining him will be Deepak Mukherjee to share lessons from one of India's most significant public sector turnaround. Now, may I please invite the two of them on stage, please? Mr. Deepak Mukherjee is a banking professional with vast experience in commercial corporate banking. He's been a management consultant and a person who specializes in corporate governance. He headed the team which led to the foundation of IDBI Bank, one of the most profitable banks in corporate and retail sector markets. Thank you very much, the two of you. Over to you, sir.
Let me try. Can you, yeah, am I audible? Well, I would like to start off by asking Mr. Bhattacharya here a question. Not very often do we find a captain of industry of your eminence write about their experience. So I would like to ask you first, what led you to writing this book, which was, you know, when coal became gold, as she told you.
Thank you, Deepakda. If I may address you, Tala.
Please.
It's a very interesting question. And to put it very frankly, you see, I joined Coal India absolutely at the grassroots level as a management training way back in 1977. I was consistently doing good work, getting promotions in time, but the work was not something on which can become the material of a book. It could be material of some articles maybe, but nothing to write a book for the first 24 years, or rather 26 years. As long as I was in finance, I grew in finance and went on to become the director of finance of one of the subsidiaries of Coal India, which is Western Coalfields. Till that time, nothing very exciting or earth-shattering really happened, which merits writing a book. All that changed in 2003 when I was selected to become the chairman cum managing director of one of the absolutely poorest company of Coal India, that is Bharat Coking Coal Limited. This is a company based out of Dhanbad, and I think nobody has a great image about Dhanbad, so people can think about it. I mean, it's a company where you hear all these kinds of mafia, this, that, everything. And the company had a track record of never earning any profit any time over the past few years. It was formed in 1971, and I'm talking about 2003. So 32 years gone by. It had only accumulated losses to the tune of 7,000 crores. And honestly, there was no idea as to what is to be done about this company. In fact, I still remember in the interview when I was asked, I was taken as a very lightweight candidate, because normally in such kind of difficult mining company, this is a mining engineer's prerogative. They are supposed to be the CMDs. So when I was asked, Mr. T.K. Nair, who was later the Principal Secretary to Prime Minister, he was chairing the PSB meeting. So he asked this question there, are you aware of the problem of the company? The production is falling like a stone. What will you do going there? I don't know what inspired me to say this. I just said, sir, that is just a manifestation of a problem. That's not the problem. The problem is elsewhere. The company has been in BIFR for the last 4 years, and still it hasn't been able to produce a plan of action. So there is somewhere consensus is lacking as to what is to be done. And that is a bigger problem. And these are manifestations. So then the question, the whole conversation turned into, what do you think is the capability required to enforce consent, build this kind of consensus? I said, simple consensus building capability of a high order. So they asked me, do you have that? I gave them a couple of examples, and the job was mine. But once I got the job, my very senior people in the company, particularly in Western Coalfields, senior mining engineers, they were simply lamenting. Where are you getting into, and what kind of a situation you will be in? So when I went there, I found that very interesting thing. Very interesting thing was that the earlier CMDs, they were not staying in the designated bungalow of the CMD. The CMD's bungalow was a huge bungalow on the main road, but deserted. He was staying in one of the director's bungalow inside the main campus. The basic idea was not to be identified as a CMD of that company, because the company was not in a position to pay wages in time. They were not paying to the suppliers in time. They were not paying to the security guys in time. None of the payments were in time. Huge liabilities had piled up, and it was completely at a loss. So from there, things started turning. I still remember the first thing that I took up was the employee's salary. They were disbursed on the 28th or 29th, the one that is due on 1st. Somehow or other, even the Provident Fund contribution of the employees were not deposited. Neither the employer's contribution. That was a part of working capital. So this kind of a situation, it is simply not sustainable. But then I had to tell something to somebody. So I convened a meeting of the trade unions, and in that meeting, the trade union was very strong. So I said that, I made a presentation, PowerPoint presentation. I was slightly rebuked, saying, the CMD sahab, cinema dikha raha hai. So I said, just hear me out. And then I mentioned that, you see, if the situation goes on like this for one more year, we will not be able to pay 12 net salaries in a year. And at that point in time, we will not be speaking like this on both sides of the table. On one side of the table will be you all with me on one side, and on the other side will be all my employees who are 100,000 in number. And they're going to ask this question, why are you not in a position to pay the salaries within the month? At that point in time, since I have come only 6 months back, I'll not answer, you will answer. Are you okay to do that? So then they said, what is the solution? And the solution is just to move salary payment from top priority to third priority. Make it priority number 3. And they said, what is priority number 2 then? I said, payment for such supplies without which production cannot happen. Production halting or safety items have to be prioritized, much above salary. That's it. Somebody very intelligently started saying, what is the second priority? He was talking from one side. So I had an answer for that, fortunately, and that's what saved me. I said the Provident Fund dues of the previous month's salary has to be deposited for the employees to be entitled to get the wages of this month. And you have to agree to that. So that's how the journey started. I don't want to elaborate much further, but lots of things happened in BCCL, and BCCL finally turned around after 2.5 years. That propelled me to the hot seat in Coal India. And I think the BCCL story is a great story. I have actually kept a chapter on that particular subject, and I'm very happy and satisfied about it. That was the first incident which led me to think that I should be writing a book. And after that, once I came to Coal India, in 4.5 years, it was a tenure of 4.5 years, particularly in the 4th year, I was destined to get the opportunity of leading the largest IPO of India at that time. And that was a blockbuster IPO. Everybody knows that the IPO was great, but very few people know what made it great. I thought that there is a good case to write about that. And these are the 2 reasons for which the book has seen the light of the day.
Well, let me then sort of, go on to the next one, which is, you just referred to as the phenomenal success of the Coal India public issue in 2010. Would you like to say a few words about it? The book has a kind of ball by ball description of this, apart from other things. So perhaps you would like to.
I'll be very happy to do that. See, the company was really not known for the right reasons. The people heard about the company whenever there was a coal crisis. Power stations not getting coal, that is the usual thing. Or coal supply to power stations affected. Otherwise, a little stray here and there, some kind of thing. People didn't know that this is actually the bedrock of sustainability of the energy systems in the country. How many people know about this? This light here you are seeing, behind this there is a coal. Do we realize? We don't realize. We don't care to realize. But that's a fact. And this company has actually done wonders. To my mind, there is no other company in the country with a strategic relevance as high as Coal India. But let that be apart. The thing is that it has to be said. It has to be told. And the telling rightly held the key to that IPO success. So that's what we started thinking right from the beginning. Once the IPO was thrust on us, it arose because we were given the Navratna status, and normally Navratna status is given only to a listed PSU. Now this was not listed, so it came with a condition that within 3 years you have to get yourself listed. That was the condition. So once that condition came, it was about 3 years' time, means 2011. I would have retired by then. I would have just retired by then. So I thought that okay. But then I thought that it will be the greatest disservice to the company if I don't do the IPO within my tenure. So then we started dipstick surveys. And we found that there are huge misconceptions, huge, internationally. We did dipsticks across the world. There were major couple of issues which were absolutely major, and I would like to take this opportunity to tell 1 or 2 of them. The first one was that in terms of man productivity, because we had at that time 500,000 people all over Coal India. So with that 500,000 people, the manpower productivity is one of the lowest in the world. What's your answer to that? So we coined answers. In fact, all these questions we deliberated internally, then came back with answers, and not only answers, with a proper presentation which addressed all these things. So the answer to this particular question was, you have to look at it as total factor productivity. If you plot the cost of production of all coal companies in the world, listed, unlisted, whatever it is, and create a cost curve, you will find Coal India on the bottom decile. Which means, in terms of cost of production rupees per ton, we are one of the lowest. It inversely means that in terms of total factor productivity, we are one of the highest. That's the corollary. I mean, these two things are related like that. So that sort of met with a proper answer to that question.
Let me proceed then. You know, the issue, of course, as we know, was a kind of a phenomenal success. When subscribers subscribed from Sydney to San Francisco, as you put it in your book. Were you happy with the pricing of the issue at the end of the day?
In fact, pricing was the most satisfactory part of the whole thing. Because during that year, when the government put the Coal India IPO, budgeted for the Coal India IPO, it was 10,000 crores for 10%, which worked out to a price of roughly 175 rupees per share. When we started the marketing part of it, the Indian marketing, we concluded, that time the valuation came to somewhere around for 10%, it came to about 12,500, which means the company was valued by the Bombay-based investors at 1,25,000 crores. By the time we went into the international leg, second time and all that, we felt that there is a good possibility of benchmarking our price with the average of the listed coal companies in the world. So that worked out to about 200 rupees or 210 rupees per price, and something like 13,000 crores for 10%, 1,30,000 crores valuation for the company as a whole. Later, we became a little more passionate about it. We were getting excellent feedback from the investors. So we said, why not benchmark with the best performing coal company in the world, which was China Shenhua, a Chinese company. And when we did that, the price worked out about 238 per share. I mean, jumped from 210 to 238. The company became valued at about 1,50,000 crores. So that is where the price was set ultimately. In fact, price was set a little higher than that, at 245. And on the day of listing, we were absolutely surprised. It was listed at a premium of 40% above that. So in terms of EV/EBITDA ratio, Coal India on that day was far superior to the best performing coal company in the world by a margin of not less than 35 to 40%. So it's a very satisfactory pricing, I would say.
Well, let me now move on. You know, behind the success of the CIL share issue, of course, there is a much longer story. And that's the story of transformation of a huge behemoth, a huge big company. And this transformation must have involved very, very careful thought, planning, and action on various parameters, right from all stakeholders. So would you like to elaborate on the transformatory process that you had initiated and you saw through it to its ultimate success?
It would not be very right to say that I have initiated the transformation process. It began much before me. In fact, one of the stories that we mentioned to the investors and which really, took them by, I would say, awe, admiration or surprise, whatever way you want to describe it, was the fact that this company actually performed exactly in line with the mandate received from the government right from the beginning. It was nationalized in 1971 in a situation where coal production needed to grow fast. It was not growing. So the mandate was, here is money for your projects, please take money, but please grow. During the first 15 years of the company turned the growth rate from sub 2% to plus 5%. So that was the contribution of that generation of management. Later in 1991,
How many minutes more do we have? Excuse me? Was that a kind of time warning? Now? I don't.
But this is only 20 minutes. I was told 40 minutes. This is 20 minutes. Exactly.
Okay.
We are just halfway through.
Yes.
Okay. So,
you were talking about the transformation process that you masterminded.
Yeah. During the 90s, the first jhatka that came was government stopped budgetary support and said that you have to fend for yourself. That was the major issue that came up. And during that period, the company carried out internal reforms which were of the highest order. I don't have time to describe the reforms. But because of those reforms, the company's transformation process gained steam and it became a profitable company. It took an uphill and it became a very good company, but at the same time profitable. At the same time, didn't earn any of the ratnas. I mean, didn't earn any of the, those the mini ratna, navaratna kind of things. That happened during my time. When I came in 2006, the first media interaction that I had, I just told everybody that I want to see this company admired by every stakeholder by the end of my tenure. I'm fortunate that something like that really happened. We took action on every front. We took action on suppliers, on the vendors, the consumers, employees, government, society, everywhere. I'd just like to mention one point here. One of the major questions asked during the IPO investor meet was that you have a reputation of degrading land. You degrade land so much. So we said that this deserves a proper answer. And the proper answer, for that answer, what we did was we tied up with National Remote Sensing Agency. We asked them to take annual photographs, pictures, satellite pictures of the open cast mines. And the top 50 of the open cast mines, which contribute about 85% of the total production, they were mapped. The project officers were told that you are under satellite surveillance, so perform or perish. The outcome of that was such, after 1 year we found all 50 mines are compliant. They all were advised to go for 14001 ISO. 53 mines received ISO 14001, and that was one of the fantastic statements we could make in the RHP. And that turned the investor attention to us, that this is a company which believes in environment.
Right. We have a time constraint, but for the young faces that I see, this book, does describe this process of transformation in some detail. So you would, I am sure, find it very instructive to do that. Let me now move on to my next question, and which is about the future. Now a lot of people think that the importance of coal will rapidly decline in the times to come, and we have. India is a party to all the commitments that we have given on environmental control, etc. So, we would like your views on those aspects about the way forward, and how do you see coal in the overall scheme of energy situation in India?
Absolutely right. Actually, you see, coal will have to go. There is no doubt about it. When is the question? Now, various countries have given various roadmaps. Most of the countries are attempting to get it done by 2050. Of course, I have great doubts, because with all these wars, etc., continuing, we are nowhere near the temperature of 1.5 degrees which we had committed. That has gone far away. But anyway, formally, most countries are attempting 2050. China is attempting 2060. We have committed 2070 as the year of turning net zero, which means by and large, by that time, coal should not be there. Now, with India, there is one fundamental problem which requires Indian roadmap for energy, for coal, to be very different from the rest of the world. See, the per capita consumption is one of the very important metrics which guides the energy pathway. For us, it is as low as 1,538, as per the last assessment. China, a very comparable country in terms of population, has reached a level of 6,000. The world average is about 3,500. Advanced countries are 6,000 plus. So we are not in a situation where if we create renewable capacity, we are creating renewable capacity at a fairly fast pace, but that is not creating an ability to phase out fossil fuel based capacity, because we are at such a low level of per capita consumption. Both will have to grow. Both will have to grow for the next 20 to 25 years at least. So we see our inflection point happening somewhere around 2047, which is the 100 years of independence. We become Vikshit Bharat, and that is when we become developed enough so that the addition of renewable capacity creates a facility for phasing out fossil fuel based capacity. But before that, both will have to grow, and we have to live with that for quite some time. The problem is that this is completely reverse or completely non-aligned to the way the energy sector will map out in advanced countries. So there could be huge headwinds for increasing coal usage for us. Maybe we have to deal with that by trying to mitigate the emission impact of coal usage much better.
Right. Let me then come to the final point that I wanted your views on. Interestingly, this book, the foreword of this book is written by no other than the departed President of India, Pranab Kumar Mukherjee. So would you like to tell us about the background to it and his interest in coal? Because he's written some interesting thing about coal being the hero of your book, which it is in many ways. Perhaps you would tell us about the connection.
See, basically, Pranab Mukherjee was the finance minister when the IPO was taken up. And his support was huge for the... I'll just list out a couple of things where he made a difference to the IPO. The first one was immediately when the IPO was announced, there was a countrywide strike announced by the workers' unions. And nobody else could have handled it based on a discussion with them. So we quickly arranged for discussions at various levels and ultimately went to the finance minister's level. So finance minister had a meeting with them, and in that meeting that one fizzled out. That was the first intervention. The second intervention was once the Minister for Environment, Jairam Rameshji, he made a statement that coal existing below forests will not be permitted to be exploited. And that had an impact of 50,000 crores on the valuation of the company. So we were at just as the IPO was proceeding. So we told the finance minister, this is the situation. He immediately convened a meeting with the environment minister, and the statement was withdrawn. So there is a second. Third, and very important, the IPO approval from the cabinet was not forthcoming, and every date was finalized. So on one particular evening, we were getting tensed, and we didn't know what to do. So I called up his residence. Somehow the call was sent to him and he took the call. So I told him that this is the problem, the cabinet approval has still not come, and therefore all the dates are now in disarray. So I don't know what happens. So he said that it will take another 3 weeks. But not stopping at that, he said, what do you think I can do to make you handle this 3 weeks of delay? Then I asked him that, well, you can authorize the selection of banks for the IPO to proceed, while the orders will be issued only after the approval, but the whole process will take about 3 weeks. He said, ask the secretary to meet me tomorrow. And that was done.
Right, so that was a critical role. So we have now come to the end of it. Finally, when can we expect your next book?
I think a person has one big book in his life.
I'm not so sure about that. Thank you very much. Thank you for talking to us, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's give it up for Parthasarathy Bhattacharya and Deepak Mukherjee. And may I now please invite Anirban Chaudhary, consulting editor, TV9 Bangla, if he's around, to please come up on stage to felicitate our guests. So. Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, with that, we are moving on to the final session for the Business and Economy Literature Festival, Money, Myths and Mantras. Devina Mehra in conversation with Saibal Biswas, our final author of the session, takes us into the world of markets, which is often misunderstood and frequently mythologized. Devina Mehra is the pioneer in the global quantitative investing and founder of First Global, author of Money, Myths and Mantras, who's joining Saibal Biswas to decode investor behavior, market psychology, as well as financial storytelling. Over to you, sir.
Hi. So I went through this book, and it's just an amazing book, ma'am, because it takes you through a whole lot of information. It tells you what were the myths and what are the mantras to write. I've been in this finance industry for long. I've been a private banker, but this book is an eye-opener. And it is fabulously written. And I think there are very few books in Indian writers' columns, that kind of book that has been laid down here. So congratulations, ma'am, for that.
Thank you very much.
We'll go deep into the book, but first I think you should give a snapshot of your journey. That's also been very, very different. So you can just tell us a little bit about your journey.
Okay, so I've been an entrepreneur for 30 plus years, but with the kind of beginnings where one wouldn't have thought that I would at all get into this profession. So I grew up in Lucknow, and my parents have both been professors. And Lucknow, when I was growing up, and I think even now, is not really a business city. So at the end of it, when I landed up at IIM Ahmedabad at the age of 19, I had no idea what a share was, what a debenture was, what debit was, what credit was. So I started from there. I joined Citibank, which at that time was considered the top job. I was in investment banking, then in corporate credit. But I was looking for basically something that would be a learning experience. So that really was my motivator. That's been my motivator all my life. And the real trigger for starting this something in the markets and specifically in securities research was Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya spoke of Dr. Manmohan Singh. So it was Dr. Manmohan Singh's liberalization budget where he opened the market to foreign institutional investors. And I said, now the market will professionalize, because until then, there was no profession called securities research in India. There was not even a course in IIM Ahmedabad because that career didn't exist. So that was the first step. And of course, the other thing at that time was that there was no National Stock Exchange, there was no SEBI. The biggest stock exchange in the country was Bombay Stock Exchange, and they said they would give us, I still remember, 71 new memberships to professional investors. So I said, let me apply. I mean, there's a whole story to it. Most people told me don't even apply because they were issuing it at a quarter of the market price, which was still a hefty 55 lakhs, but it was a quarter of the 2 crore market price. Said it's a broker's club, they won't give it to you. You are not a Gujarati, you're not a Marwadi, you are not even a, you're a woman on top of that. I know a lot of people didn't apply. So there's a whole story to that. At the end, I got extra 2 marks for my IIM gold medal. That may push me over the cutoff. So you don't know in hindsight where, something will help you. So that was the beginning of the journey. So I was on the broking and investment banking side in the 90s, dealing almost entirely with foreign institutional investors. At the end of the 90s, I did again something which everyone advised me sounds crazy and makes no sense, which was going global. So in 1999, we became not just the first Indian, but the first Asian members of the London Stock Exchange, other than the Japanese. And the next year of the NASD, everyone told me that in those markets, they have all these, old Wall Street firms and big banks, and you are a nobody, who's going to listen to you? And my whole thing was that if I think I know how to do securities research, why can't I research any company in the world? And the most heartening part was that unlike here, I didn't know the media, I didn't know anybody. But just on the quality of the work, in no time, we were in Forbes, Fortune, Business Week, Wall Street Journal, front page, Barron's, everywhere. So to the young people there, I would say that uh, build your capabilities, but don't let just that has anyone done it before hold you back. If you know from first principles you can do something. And then of course the last kind of pivot was from servicing fund managers to becoming a fund manager. So I started managing global assets in 2015 and started a PMS in India, portfolio management service in India in 2020. So that's the, and as you said, now we are quant led. So that was the other thing.
Yeah, we'll probe a few on quant, but fantastic journey, and I'm sure people will want to replicate that journey and pick up bits and pieces of that journey as well. So, superb. Now let me get back to the book. I mean, let me post some of the investor questions. You know, when an investor starts looking at his investment process, sometimes he finds it extremely cumbersome, difficult to follow all the processes. And sometimes even ends up giving up, saying that, oh my God, this is a long process, how do I do it? What's your take on that, and what's the message that you want to pass on to the investors for that?
So the simplest message is that investing is neither as simple nor as complicated as you think. So I know, like I was talking in a large public sector firm some time back, and they said, you know, a lot of our employees get to nearly, it says these are senior management people who get to nearly retirement age and find that their investments are mostly in still fixed deposits and PF and things like that, because all your life you think, no, once I understand this, then I will do it, and yet I don't understand it. So you are just in that frozen kind of mindset, or you think that I must know the very last thing, I must know how to unearth multi-bagger stocks, until then I don't start. So don't try to optimize. Remember that 85 to 90% of your returns come from asset allocation. That's all, I think, almost the first chapter in my book, which is that the buckets in which your assets are, whether it is fixed income, which includes fixed deposits and fixed income mutual funds, or it is in equity, which is direct equity, as well as equity through mutual funds, PMS, etc., gold, real estate, maybe if you have alternative assets like crypto or art. So first get a overall actual balance sheet of where your assets are and where you should be, and just get that broad allocation right. You are through to the extent of 85-90% optimization. And to the young people at the back, start early. You will see on the net all these things, that if you start saving at 25 versus 30 versus 35, you have to save and invest many times that amount every month. So start early. If you say, I'm not earning enough, I can't save 20% of my salary, start with 5%, but next year's increment save 70% of that. So those are the things. Just do the simple stuff right. As I say, good investing is boring. It doesn't get you the cocktail conversations, but it gets you the right corpus you need for your goals.
Yeah, that demanded an applause. Yeah. So the next question drags me to the place where there's so much of noise around investments now. There is social media, there are all kinds of media forces who's talking about investments. How does an investment make a difference between reality and a myth?
Yeah, that's a hard one in some senses, because there is a lot of mis-selling in financial services. There's no getting around that. I mean, so-called, even your bank relationship manager might want to sell you an insurance policy, even if you are a retiree, simply because it makes them money. So you have to be, one of the things I think should be there as part of our education system is basic financial literacy. I mean, my subjects are mathematics and all, but I still think rather than teach advanced calculus, get people to understand how to calculate an internal rate of return, how to evaluate an investment, what are taxes and things like that. And that's missing from our education system. But now, of course, it is easy to learn that. And always think when somebody is advising you something, what is their incentive. So you have to do your own evaluation. Unfortunately, I can't say that rely on X, Y, Z. And just as a broad thing, one thing I'll tell you, that don't, when I'm talking of, let us say, even equity investments, don't look at very narrow themes that should I be in small caps now, should I be in defense today, should I be in pharma, because those themes change. So invest in something that is broad-based, that is multi-cap or flexi-cap. Because one thing I can tell you, I repeat it often in my interviews, and I mean, that is the truth, that the easiest way to find where there is froth in the system is where all the mutual fund, NFOs or new fund offerings are coming. When there's a cluster around a certain theme or a certain industry, and this we have plotted, we are very data driven, so we've actually plotted it since the mutual fund industry began. And it is always near the peak of that theme. When there is a FOMO feeling that my friend has made money in defense stocks and I haven't, and so the next defense stock NFO that comes, let me invest. So be wary of things like that. So just invest in the broad categories. Don't think you will be this genius who will find the next big thing. So don't be in pursuit of that next big thing.
Yeah. So it's also about not doing it yourself, but doing your learning, because your learning will help you and get guided on what you need to choose.
Yeah, I mean, whether you should be a do-it-yourself investor, there is a chapter on this, but which is really evaluating, and which was my last column in Mint also. I write a fortnightly for them. Whether you should be a DIY investor, you have to evaluate yourself as a fund manager, and you may not be the best fund manager, but you can still allocate your money. The other, I would say, a big mistake often people make is being on either end of the risk spectrum. Like if you are only in fixed deposits and you are saving a lakh a year over 30 years, that will become 75 lakhs. If you are in a multi-asset thing which maybe compounds 9.5%, it will become 1.5 crores. If you are in a more equity-oriented portfolio which compounds 12%, that becomes 3 crores. So that's like a difference of 4 times. So, but don't think, I mean, this also I find sometimes people are totally not even in equity, and then suddenly think they will become after retirement or something that I'll become a day trader in crypto or derivatives. So don't play fast and loose with your money either. As I said, do the boring stuff.
Yeah, so asset allocation is that much more important then.
Yeah, and one other mistake, of course, on asset allocation, is that people think of asset allocation as allocation in various assets within India. The biggest gap in Indians' portfolio is global diversification. So one number, when I started working, the dollar was 12 rupees. So in the course of less than a career, there's been a 90% depreciation. And this is something you cannot forget when you are saving for goals which are 10, 20, 30 years later, that the rupee depreciates. And that is the biggest gap. And that comes out of a mindset, because long after I started working, you could not invest overseas. Not only that, you could, even if you were traveling overseas, you could take only $500, and that too once in 3 years. If the second time you were traveling or the third time you were traveling, you actually went with $20 in your pocket. That's all you were allowed to take. So our grandmothers were not wrong in buying gold, because at that time gold was the only overseas investment effectively that you could do. That was the only hard currency denominated asset. But now you can invest overseas. In fact, the RBI's LRS, Liberalized Remittance Scheme, is very generous. It is $250,000 per person per year. So a family of 4 can send out $1 million. That's 9 crore rupees a year. So effectively for everybody, they can send out as much as they want. I mean, just in 2025, for anyone who was planning to study abroad or who planning to send the children to study abroad, and thought that Trump's visa regime is not getting uncomfortable, so one should go to Europe. In the course of this 1 year, the rupee has depreciated against the euro about 20%. So the college bill has gone up 20% in just 1 year. So this is the other biggest missing part in everyone's asset allocation, most people's asset allocation. And because it is a cause for me, and global, other mistake is thinking global means just the US. No, US is not the world. So we have a product that starts at $10,000, which invests in all countries, all assets. Because as I said, it's a cause for me that Indians have this big missing part in their portfolios.
Yeah, so international currency exposure, in spite of the fact that we believe that our economy will do very well, but still it is important to diversify.
Yeah, so
across
just the
currencies.
answer to that is in the 90s, we say that if India is the highest growing economy, why should I look elsewhere? So in the 90s, which were the highest growing economies? They were the so-called Asian tigers. And then came 1 year, just 1 year, in which there was a crisis. And in that 1 year, each of those markets in dollar terms fell between 50% for Taiwan and 90% for Indonesia. And all this South Korea, Thailand, Philippines were between this 50 and 90. And in my Citibank days, I had gone to set up their Indonesian securities subsidiary. So I'd spent a few months in Indonesia, and that was like, it was said like if I was an Indonesian, my net worth would have been wiped out by 90%. And that was one of the motivations for me to go global, that being in a single market is dangerous. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's the simplest way to put it.
Absolutely.
And India is on less than 5% of the world market cap. So there's no reason, no objective reason why 90 or 100% of your investment should be here.
Absolutely. Coming back to the book, there is this 9 mantras. I wish the listeners can get a sneak peek into the 9 mantras. And one line I just want to quote, which has caught my eye, mind, everything, is that don't be bearish, don't be bullish, be what, ma'am?
Be harish.
Yeah.
So this is when we were thinking of a company mascot, I did some research that what's a good animal, and you found the hare, because the hare is very fast, but it can move directions also equally fast. Because in markets, one thing is for sure, that no theme lasts forever, whether it's country, asset class, sectors. So you should be able to change direction. The other thing which a hare has and which one aspires to is a near 360-degree vision. So, those were the qualities. So, I mean, basically, the thing is, don't get married to a position. One of the basic things that make us human is stories. Human beings are creatures of the story. And that is one thing which is common across all civilizations, across time, across degree of sophistication, is that we learn through stories, we teach through stories, we remember stories, we react to stories, we don't react to data. If I tell you today that, in the 2 districts around Kolkata, there are 5 lakh malnourished children, you will turn the page. But let me show you a picture or a video of a single family that is starving, you will give money to that charity. So ads are always stories, but stories are what hold you back, because the market is not a human being. The market doesn't care for your carefully crafted stories. So as a investor, you have to be driven by data rather than stories, and that is why you should not be married to a position. You should not fall in love with any story or any position in your head. That's so important. And that's where, a lot of not just, I'm not talking lay investors, but that's a trap for human beings who act as fund managers. And the funniest thing about stories is that you tell a story enough times, you start to believe in it. And I can give you, many examples from professional fund managers that you start kind of selling a story, and therefore you can't change that story even in your own head. So you have to actively guard against that. I always say that for me, my kind of hero, my guru, my pin-up boy is Daniel Kahneman, and both his books are among my top 5 of all time, and I read a fair amount. And that really opens your mind to how much human beings are creatures of the bias, and that holds for all of you in whichever field you are in, even outside of investing, that so many biases are hard-coded into us because of evolution. So and even if you intellectually understand it, it is difficult to get it out of your actual behavior.
Another question that comes to mind and is very relevant in today's investment world is that what's your take on active versus passive, and how should you include active or passive or both in your portfolios?
Okay, so one thing is, see, to a lay person, it appears that passive is somehow lower risk than active investing. So passive investing, for not everybody will be a finance professional, means buying something that tries to replicate the movement of the index. It may not exactly mirror it, there's always errors, but basically you are not trying to choose stocks actively, you are just doing what the index, you are trying to replicate the index. So that's essentially what passive investing is. But I'll tell you what the value of an active fund manager is. And that's only one thing, risk management. So even when you are talking to somebody who's a financial advisor or a fund manager, everyone will have a very elaborate presentation, I can guarantee you, on how they pick stocks. Ask them when they sell. What is their process for deciding when to sell? What is their process for risk management? And then you will come to know what their depth of their understanding is. Economic Times a while back did this analysis of mutual funds, and they were surprised by the results. I was not, which was that they found that the best performing mutual fund schemes are the ones that outperformed during the downturns. In fact, there was one scheme which had outperformed during 93% of the up moves, but was among the bottom schemes because it fell more when the market fell. And investing is a loser's game. You have to play it not to lose. You don't have to play it to win. I mean, there is a old article, it's a 1970s article, and I urge everybody to just Google and read it. It's 4 or 5 pages only. Charles Ellis, called The Loser's Game. It's always been part of my training kit. And which is that every game in the world is either a winner's game or a loser's game. Games change and you play it according to what kind of game it is. Like tennis at the Grand Slam level is a winner's game. You have to play brilliantly to win. At your local club level, it's a loser's game. You just keep the ball in play and your opponent will make enough mistakes for you to win. So in investing, your first and primary thing has to be that you don't take a big loss or a big hit on your capital. Which means you have to take some small losses. So you always have, like we always have stop losses, but you don't take a big hit because percentages are not symmetrical. If something falls by 1/3, it has to go up 50% for you to go to zero. If something falls by 50%, it has to double for it to go to zero. So you have to make sure that you don't take those 30-40% hits, and that's where active fund management, that's where the real value add is. But not every fund manager is thinking that way, so you have to look at what the fund manager is saying and doing on that.
I also agree with you that risk management is a pivotal element in investment, and risk is a very, movable thing. It changes from time to time. So your risk assessment must be controlled and figured out, and then investment must be done. Yeah. Going back to a different topic is that the buzzword today is AI. And how will AI get incorporated into investment processes? So your take on investments through AI, with AI, without AI, and the conclusion from there that we can draw.
Okay, so let me first tell you that I told you I started my PMS in 2020. I actually had the license for 20 years and I had not started. And the reason was very simple. I didn't mind being the first to go global. I didn't mind being kind of the last to start a PMS. They said that I must have a system whereby I can say the results are somewhat predictable and consistent. And that actually came with an AI/ML system, not as a black box system. But I'm not using AI and ML because it is available or because it is fashionable. So let me give you another sports analogy. So, I mean, the younger people at the back, do you know why hockey is India's national game? After all, I mean, for 50 years we did nothing in hockey. So why is it our national game? Does anybody know? So, I mean, from 1928 to 1970s, India and later India and Pakistan dominated hockey. Dominated to the extent there were 2 Olympics where there was not one single goal scored against India. So in 1970s, how did we go from hero to zero? And the reason was very simple, the playing field changed. It changed from natural grass to AstroTurf or artificial grass. And the change in playing field meant the skill set required changed. So from being a game of Major Dhyan Chand's brilliant stick work and dribbling and all of that, it moved to where fitness was very important, speed was very important, where Indians were not good. So in investing also a fundamental change has happened over the last 20, 30 years, which is that it has moved from a game of having additional information, or you can say information arbitrage, And till the 90s, that was the game. Even getting an annual report was difficult. And I loved going around the countryside. I actually would take overnight trains to see a cement plant or a steel plant or meeting companies. The company refused to meet. Sometimes I'd just go to the factory and meet them. But now the game has changed. Now you cannot give differential information. So now everybody has masses of data. Now the skill set has moved to who can analyze the data, and that's where the machines are better. So machines can look at more companies, they can look at more factors per company. Most of all, they can do it without bias or without randomness which human beings bring. I mean, human beings are random creatures. You have a fight in the traffic, you will look at the same data differently today at work. I mean, they've found that in one of Daniel Kahneman's books, if you want relief from a judge, if you want bail from a judge, don't go before lunch. Go after lunch. I mean, there's a statistically significant difference. So that's how random human beings are. So this removes all of that. Plus, I mean, human beings hate to admit mistakes. Machine has no problem learning from its failure, learning from its success. But a pure techie system also doesn't work because you need the market expertise. Otherwise, you can misuse computing power to come up with spurious correlations. So, so we use what we call a human plus machine system, which is that the machine does the first level filtering, but not as a black box. We can see which factor has moved. And then we apply human intelligence on top of that. But in general, systems outperform human judgment. So you overrule a machine only if you have a good reason to overrule a machine. I mean, this is called a broken leg analogy, that a machine will better predict whether someone will go for a concert unless you know for certain this person has broken their leg and cannot go. So you should not overrule, because otherwise you overrule because of your persistent stories, that this company or this sector is useless or it is very good, either way. So you human beings, that persistence of vision appears and you don't change your stories even though the data has changed. So the machine forces you to look at the data.
Yeah, so AI will be extremely important. I was looking at a credit company, all their credit analysis is done in minutes.
Yeah, and now seconds, I mean, they're like,
seconds,
I mean, they're like, but I mean, the crazy thing in that is I was on another panel recently with somebody who was in that business, and they said basically what we do is we analyze the potential borrower's entire SMS and WhatsApp history. I mean, I was like shocked, and that's what they're doing. They're looking for patterns there, that are you delaying utility bills? Are you having problems with close associates? So I mean, this is but they use all that to come up with a credit score.
Yeah, even companies, if you look at, you get all information about directors, if there are pending case against him and so on and so forth. So much of data is available, and if you can use it, it's speed, all about speed. The next question aligned with this is with AI. We know that there is machine and machine learning, but what about empathy? What about management of behavioral science? So where is that going to, will it going to remain? Will it going to go? People say doctors might go, nurses will remain. Because doctors' operation can be done by machine, but nurses' empathy cannot be replicated. So what's your view on that in this world of investments?
So in investments, see, anyway, even when we were doing it humanly, I always said that all stories must be borne out by data. If you're saying this company's management is good or this company's brand is good, I mean, brand is great, where does it come? I mean, are they, is their market share more stable when the market falls? Do they have more pricing power? Is their margin higher? Somewhere it has to come. If the management is good in the last downturn, did they manage their receivables and payables better than the other competition? So, I mean, I'm not sure that the empathy part is there, but actually the thing is that I often see that numbers also you can understand, but getting control of your own mind as an investor is the real tough ask. Because that is so hard-coded, because see, a lot of the biases we talk about have not come arbitrarily. They have come because of human evolution. So let me give you a non-investing example, which is that every time the new iPhone comes, there are all these queues, and there is like this data that 70% of iPhones in India are financed. They are not bought with outright cash. And, you know, people want whatever, Gucci bags and Tumi bags. And so that also actually comes from our hunter-gatherer days. That's it's not that you want to buy the Gucci bag, it is that you want to belong to your tribe. Because, I mean, human evolution has no interest in your portfolio. It's interested in only two things, procreation and survival. So if you were thrown out of the tribe or you walked out of the tribe, your procreation was gone and survival also was in question. So we are progeny of people who stayed with the tribe. So in investing, for example, you know, everybody wants to be on the same bandwagon. It is very difficult to be in the minority of one and say, I'm doing something different from what all my friends are doing. And it's not even about spending money. If you, let's say, wanted to belong to a different sort of tribe where the uniform was a jhola and torn jeans, and you wouldn't be caught dead with the Gucci bag. So that's where, you know, so it's very interesting to learn about your biases, but it is also, without a system, it is impossible to get over your biases. When Daniel Kahneman worked 70 years in this field, he got a Nobel Prize for it, and he said, after all this study, my own decision-making has barely changed. It is that hard-coded.
Yeah, behavior is something which changes from time to time. We have seen customer investing the most when the markets are at peak and things like that. So those are...
Yeah, I mean, actual data shows that sentiment is a contraindicator. That when everybody is feeling great and buoyant, which was the first half of 2024, when everybody thought, you know, 30% every year was a given, that post that the returns are below normal. And when you are feeling down and out, should I stop my SIP? Should I get out of the market? The returns after that in the next period are above normal. And this is not just India and US, everywhere where this research study has been done, Portugal, Brazil, etc. Same conclusion, that the only time you should think of actually stopping the SIP maybe is when you're feeling too good, not when you're feeling too bad.
Yeah, so that should be the process flow. My last two questions are, one is that in your book you describe a lot about study of balance sheets, ratios, cash flows, discounting cash flows, etc. How important is to study them? And is for a common investor, is that easy? And if not, is there a guide who will guide you through that process? How important is that first?
See, now, of course, if you want to learn, all the information is out there. You can even do the courses of major universities for free. So that is not the point. But do you want to do that? Do you have the time to do that? Which is why I said that for most people who have a day job or a day business or whatever, the better thing would be to give the money to professional fund managers. If you just want some money to learn and to be able to talk at parties, maybe keep 10-20% for yourself. So it will only be the exceptional person who can do that. But those who want to do that, I have given some of the tools, and one of the main things is to go beyond the income statement. That this is the sales growth, this is the margin growth, this is what happened to profit, because everything hides in the cash flows and the balance sheet. And the companies also very well know that you look only at the income statement. So when there's a problem in the company, they will try to keep the sales and profits protected by, let us say, telling their customer that instead of 15 days credit, you take 2 months credit. So first it will show up in stretching of receivables and so on, or lower cash flow. So there are many things you need to do if you want to really do professionally, but you know, not many people will have the time to do it. And also remember that Excel sheets are the best place to write fairy stories. So all this, you know, projections the way people do for 20 years, the fact is that even, you know, every research report you pick up will have earnings growth every year, cash flow growth every year. But out of 4,000 odd listed and traded companies in India, only 10 or only 17 have shown some profit growth. That means there was no profit decline for 10 years has happened only for 17 companies, 17. Only one company has not seen a profit decline for 20 years, which is HDFC Bank. So, I mean, it is as exceptional as that. You would not know it from looking at discounted cash flows. So that is why in our PMS, every quarter we look at that today if I had cash, where will I be invested? Because otherwise, you know, endowment bias is one thing which is again very hard-coded within us, that we value something more highly simply because we own it. And that is why we don't get rid of the dud investments in our portfolio. So that's one tip I can give all of you, that you will have many dud investments, get out and get into better investments.
Yeah, that's right. So when you look at your Demat account, you might find many companies which we have been in love with, but not showing the results. My last question is, we're licking our lips with the book that you have put. What is the next one out?
They will be probably in 2026. I'm trying to make that one little even more basic. All the questions I get, that what should I do specifically? So I'm really trying to answer the question and maybe use some infographics to make it simpler.
Great. So if you have any questions, just post it to Ravina. I'm sure she'll be able to answer in this next book. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful conducting this format. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shobil Biswas, as well as Davina Mehra, for sharing your nuggets of wisdom on financial freedom. So if you have any dud investments, time to get rid of them. May I please now invite Amritanshu Bhattacharya. He is the managing editor for TV9 Bangla and the business head as well, to kindly felicitate our two guests. Thank you. All right, with that, we've come to the end of the Business and Economy Literature Festival. But before you all go, may I kindly request you to stay back for the vote of thanks. May I invite Ajay, please, to come up on stage. He's the convener for the Business and Economy Literature Festival. And the vote of thanks is all yours, Ajay.
Thank you, Shweta. So, ladies and gentlemen, we arrive at the concluding part of BELF 2025. It was indeed an enriching event with stimulating and engaging conversation with authors, both the seasoned ones as well as the new generation authors, covering wide range of topics, each highly relevant to the modern day business and for an economy which is in the stage of transition. We are grateful to all the authors who could make themselves available for this event despite a lot of the logistical challenges some of them had to face, and also all the moderators, some of them despite the last minute changes, did a wonderful job to bring the best out of the authors. This was the first edition of the event. There were obvious limitations, as it happens all the time, but we are committed to this festival, Business and Economy Literature Festival, which is a very niche but very unique initiative from our part. And we will learn from the experiences, and I'm sure the next edition will be definitely bigger, improved, and much more refined and impactful. It is indeed now the time for me to thank everyone who supported in this endeavor. EIILM Kolkata, the presenting partner, the associate sponsors, the Bamalori, Alliance, ChatGPT, UEM, Priyogopal Bishoi, Mukharachak, Tata Structura, Policy Bazaars, print partner, Bartaman, media partner, Business Standard, and writing partner, Parker. Also, I would like to emphasize that this initiative was an intense teamwork by the organizing colleagues, and that really made these things happen. Once again, we are thankful here to the leadership and patronage of Mr. Barun Das, MD and the CEO of TV9, and the great collaboration between the TV9 team, Penguin Random House, who was the knowledge partner, Storynest Communication, concept and curation partner, and Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the industry partner. And last but not the least, we are really thankful to the audience, the young stars who were present here the last 2 days, and intensely and patiently they heard all the conversation. So thank you so much. I'm sure we will meet you all in the next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay, and many congratulations on the successful summit. And with that, we close Business and Economy Literature Festival 2025. Hope to see you again in 2026. All right, can we call organizers, all the organizing committee, TV9 Network, people who were responsible for making this event successful, to kindly come up on stage for a group photograph. Gargi, Amritanshu sir, Mawa, please come up on stage, every person. All of you have done. Swati, obviously, needless to say. Samrat, wherever he is. I don't know all the names of the Bangla team. Hopefully I will know them by next year, but you know who you are. Every person who made this successful, please come up.
Thank you, Shweta.